Righty. So, would you rather dance salsa or country music?
100% salsa. I had to do country when I lived in Tucson, and I had enough of it doing the two-step.
Yeah, are you good at country music dancing though?
Not really. My best dancing is break dancing. I can do a mean backspin, a windmill, and a moonwalk, but any other dancing, I'm kind of below average.
Okay. If you had the chance to, would you rather have a dog that talks or a cat that does your laundry?
I definitely would like the cat to do my laundry because if my doggy talks, he's going to talk way too much.
Too many complaints.
Maybe, or he doesn't like the dog food I'm giving him, but the laundry thing sounds very nice. You know how meticulous cats are, so I'm sure they'd be folding it too.
Absolutely. And would you go back in time and live again, or would you rather live forever?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question.
So if you go back in time, you could have the chance to amend certain things or relive certain things, or you could live forever.
But the living forever, my good friend. I think
Yeah.
after you've eaten so much chocolate and climbed so many mountains and jumped on so many trampolines, then it becomes monotonous where at the end you're just there and there's no more stimulation. I've listened to Alan Watts and other philosophers about living forever and the thought process behind that. So maybe it's better to, if you go back, it's not even making amends. Since you have the maturity and the experience and that second chance, you'd be shining every day. Would you be the most popular everywhere you go? Why? Because you already know everybody. And so
Right.
you just start introducing yourself and you know their favorite colors and food and you almost have that leverage. But if you don't take advantage of that and you let it happen a second time, the right way, the way it should have been done, then maybe instead of absorbing, you could pay it forward and assist others' lives. And I think that would be the most beautiful thing too.
Yeah, I think most people would probably take that choice. Welcome to another episode of Successful Quitters. This is episode number 3. And today I have an amazing guest that has a different kind of story, a very interesting story. Welcome, Richard Blank. When he was 27 years old, he relocated from the United States to Costa Rica to train 5,000 employees for one of the larger call centers in San Jose. But he ended up training over 10,000 bilingual telemarketers, and he has the largest collection of restored American pinball machines and antique Procola jukeboxes in Central America. Today, he's the chief officer for Costa Rica Call Center. Welcome, welcome. So glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. I love your show. I think you do great work and you have such
Thank you.
positive energy. So I wanted to make sure that I could come here and share some ideas with you and your amazing audience.
Absolutely. I appreciate you and I look forward to sharing your story with them. Richard, let's start at the beginning. Tell me how Richard at 5 years old was, where you lived, and what your lifestyle was at that age.
I was adventurous. Some people say travieso, but I really wasn't a bad kid. I was just interested. But I tell you what, I had very fortunate parents that liked to travel. So I used to go to Mexico and I would come back not only with a nice tan, but also with vocabulary. I
What part of
loved it.
Mexico?
We used to go to Puerto Vallarta in
Oh,
Acapulco.
nice.
And so I got to see these certain areas. Naturally, you're at the resort and you're having a great time. But
Yeah.
it really was as I mentioned, the vocabulary. and the flair of a different culture that was different from Northeast Philadelphia, where I grew up, Sarah. And so it was new for me. It was exciting. And when I came back and I could try my vocabulary with Latinos in Philadelphia, all I got, just like you, was a positive reinforcement, excitement in learning that second language, and encouragement. And so I almost saw it from an early age that if I held on to this spark, it might take me somewhere, and kind of took me where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older brother. He's brilliant. He was, I'm a CPA, a very smart man, graduated Washington and Lee University, which is
Mm.
pretty nice Ivy League. And my dad went to Columbia Business, and my grandpa went to Harvard Law. So there was a lot of pressure there. But when I was in high school, I didn't succumb to that pressure. I decided to follow my dreams and be a Spanish major at the University of Arizona. I didn't have the grades for medicine, law, engineering, or architecture, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to be marketable. And back in the mid 90s, if you were bilingual, it was great in the Southwest. And it opened many doors for me and just gave me momentum. And
Yeah.
Sarah, when I was 27, I was given a 1 in a million opportunity from a very good friend of mine. He said, Richie, come to Costa Rica for a couple months and teach some English. Well, I stayed, worked
That's
for him
where,
for 4 years, fell in love and married
yeah.
a Costa Rican, and we're celebrating our 16th year in business of starting a call center. So
Wow.
it's been a beautiful gift
Journey.
of life and time, and it's very humbling.
Richard, let me ask you something. Going back to, because I just want to be able to show a little bit more of where the strength came and how we got to this 27-year-old that made the choice.
Of course.
Um, Going back to your early days, who were you closest to out of your parents? Was it your mom or your dad? Who do you
The
think you
best of
resemble the
both.
most?
Well, my mother naturally was the one that was with me most of the time. My father traveled a lot and he was in New York and traveling the United States. And so we'd see him on weekends and vacations. But,
Mm,
and it was always fun. But I guess
yeah,
my mother had the more influence, the more
I see.
stability and consistency. My dad was just an excellent time. And he was always proud of me if I was hitting home runs or scoring in hockey. But I tell you
Yeah,
what, when I was growing up, I knew I had to make very responsible decisions. And I was very scared
very.
because, you need maturity to choose a certain path and stick with it. And at 18, you're just running around and having fun. And so, really, it was my dedicated Spanish teacher, Esperanza Galshak. And she's the one that really pulled me aside and said, "Do you have a plan for the future?" And I said,
Mm,
"Well, I kind of want to go to college." And she goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" I go, "I have no idea." And I'm getting a lot of pressure to go to law school or be an accountant. And even though
yeah.
it sounds exciting, I just didn't want to do it. And so I got a college recommendation letter from my Spanish teacher. I had her since ninth grade. So it's four
Mm.
years right there. And then my
At,
principal of my high school offset my average grades and wrote me a recommendation too to pay it forward and get me into school.
nice.
And it was beautiful.
At that point, you were playing sports. Then you were playing hockey.
Well, I was a tri-letterman. I was trying to build this curriculum to get into college. So I played ice hockey, golf, and lacrosse. And
Mm.
I was very active in student government. I was not honor roll. My thing was donut sales and raising money for the school and public speaking and stuff. And so but I got to share a secret with you. It's not
Go
really a
for it.
secret, but during those years, my parents were actually separating. And so
Mm.
there was a very large empty house that I had on the weekends because they both were traveling and doing their things. And so I had a lot of parties, and I used that influence to meet people and to network and to raise
Mm.
money for the school. So a lot of it was interactive learning outside of the classroom. And I had a class of 550 kids. There was a lot of people to have fun with, but it really wasn't that. It was more of just finding my way. And even though I couldn't compare notes to people like you, Sarah, you would have been perfect in high school to talk to because we could have shared notes, but I didn't have that. I didn't
Yeah.
have anybody that was taking a second language seriously or even seeing the future in it. And so
Yeah.
dreamers sometimes have to walk alone. And my argument to my parents, and you're going to love this, is that my great grandparents came to the United States at the turn of the 20th century. They're Eastern Europeans and they didn't speak English. They learned English, started a business, and here we are. And so it's in our blood, Sarah, and we're nomads. And I
Yeah.
want the adventure that great grandpa had. I want to leave a castle to slay a dragon and save a princess. I needed to have that sort of adventure in life, and the only way to do it was to make it pure.
Yeah.
And that was my argument to my parents to invest 5 years of university study and to understand why I wanted to move abroad. But
That's a very um, study in depth, I would say. If you're talking about a language, it's a lot. You're very proficient at that point, right?
not
After
even close.
not even close.
We're talking about advanced basic or basic intermediate, and we're just
Yeah.
talking about barely understanding the subjunctive tense or how to do the conjugation of the verb caber so you say it correctly. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't the easiest thing, but this is where I knew that it was my future. When you love something, you do dedicated practice. You don't do the average. You're like the Karate Kid. You do the jumps and the kicks and the practice when Miyagi's not around. And with me, I loved reading books in Spanish, watching
Mm.
movies, and having intercambios where I could just hang out and speak and say, como se dice, and just learn certain vocabulary words. And I learned at one point that I could really roll with vocab and a little bit of grammar. If it's anything, just present tense, you can get away with it. And then
Yeah.
eventually you learn the preterite and imperfect tense and why, and the difference between Sarah and a star, which is nice. And as I say, the subjunctive tense, which is beautiful because Spanish is a romantic language. It really shows the emotion of desire and doubt. And so when you're speaking you sound beautiful on how you can express yourself. And so for me, it was fun. I mean, little by little, you can hang 10 a little bit more on the surfboard. I mean, conversations went
Yeah.
from 2 minutes to 5 minutes. To the next thing you know, we're hanging out for an hour just talking about life. And
Nice.
that's when you reached your apex and your peak. And then all you want to do is gobble, 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 gobble. And once you have that foundation of the language, the rest is just vocabulary and dichos and expressions and
Yeah.
learning cultures. And oh, it enriched my life. So, Sarah, it really did. And it
Yeah.
gave me a wonderful first impression with someone that speaks any sort of second language. You know the dedication and the
Oh yeah,
commitment that you put to it.
absolutely. It's so interesting to hear you speak about the language because me being a Latina, I'm from Peru.
Mhm.
So speaking it fluently, you never really think about how beautiful it is. Although I
Mm.
know it is, but I guess you don't appreciate it as much. And now that I hear you talk about it so nicely, I'm like, wow, yeah, that's true. Everything he's saying is truthful about the language, about Spanish, for sure.
Oh yeah, like the word rascacielo, you're scratching the sky. I mean, that's wickedly cool. And also my favorite word in
Rascacielos.
Spanish of all time is buo. You gotta love the owl. I mean, what a cool
Bull.
word. And so I mean, these are fun. It sounds good. It makes you seem smart if you can
Yeah,
work your brain that way. And they claim that in the future to keep your coco. You do
yeah,
crossword puzzles or languages, and I don't really like crossword puzzles. So I prefer to do languages. But
for sure. And let's transition then into that time when you had to make that choice and leave this place where you were so comfortable at to move
yeah,
into, to jump into something that you weren't, you had to take that leap of faith. right? And
Sure.
start from scratch at an unknown place, at a place where you were not um, were born at, and start
Mm-hmm.
over. And so, what I'd like to know that will help us a lot is, what are the things that you had to quit in order to become that being that had the courage to take that leap of faith?
Of course. And the things that I had to quit were important to others, but wasn't a priority for me. I had to quit parents' guilt.
Mm.
I needed to liberate myself so I can go on my own vision quest, my own spiritual life journey. And I was willing to die with my boots on that, okay? And I was willing to quit the naysayers, the gray believers, the Debbie Downers and negative Nancy's, the ones that say no, no, no. That's weight, mentally, physically, even spiritually. And you have to let that go in order to rise. It's not like they don't love you, they just don't understand you. And sometimes you have to make those very selfish decisions in order to live a very nice life. And these were, at 27, certain decisions I had to make for the rest of my life. And if I could look at myself in the mirror and know that I'm doing this with good intentions, I was more than willing to move
Yeah.
forward. But I was lucky. A friend of mine was here. They had an established company. My cousin was here as well, visiting Costa Rica. So I already started off with a safety net and introductions and people that can show me the way just to make it easier. But I also kept an open mind and always realized, Sarah, that I'm a guest in another country and to follow their rules and be as respectful as possible. And I guess the number one thing is patience. There may be long
I
lines or huequitos in the calle, and you just gotta accept what comes at you, the good and the bad. But you
I
know,
love that.
Mhm.
I love that you bring up a really good point, because it's the same thing for people that migrate into the United States. I think it's very fair and logical that we follow the rules of the country, and sometimes we just need to be reminded of that. So I really like that. How did you deliver the news to your parents?
Well, they kind of saw it. I mean, obviously, learning the second language and getting excited about certain things, they knew that if I had an opportunity, I was going to take it. And so when it was given to me, I really made the strongest argument about my, antepasados, my ancestors.
Yeah.
But then again, I looked them in the eyes and I said, I need to take this. And if I don't, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I did not have a wife or children or a mortgage. I was in between jobs at the moment. So if you think about it, there was, besides my family and spending time with them, I did not have any other additional responsibilities. I wasn't cutting somebody off or leaving someone out to dry. And so the timing, the stars being aligned, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, the first day that I walked off the plane, August 15th of 2000, and I was in this beautiful Central America paradise, I knew that I was going to do everything I could to stay. Why? Because in my heart, I had a feeling I was going to find a princess here. I really wanted to find a tropical girl to see if I can marry and have a life with. And that was a goal too. That if I had to come back to the United States, I'd love to come back with a very, very special person. And so um, I don't know. Maybe it was just shedding some skin, Sarah, and being bold and brave, even vulnerable. If you think about it, you mentioned not knowing one here and going to another country.
I
Well, that's
know.
wonderful. You need to be valiente. You need to go for it from
Crazy. You
time to
have to
time.
be crazy valiente, but in a good way?
Oh yeah, and a
Like
smiling crazy, of course.
in a outrageous crazy, but I think that you have to be, in order to move to a different country and be okay, understanding that you know nothing and you have nothing there, it's a different kind of bravery. You have to be a different kind of being, or really be in the search for that one thing that you think is there.
True,
in
true.
order to survive. So you met her, yeah?
I met her here. And here's the thing, I didn't want to bring any baggage with me, mental baggage. You know the
Yeah.
rat race and
Yeah.
how people are raised and things like that. So I realized I said I wanted to, the expression is Barar and Cuenta Nueva. I wanted to really start fresh and start again. And so, yes, Sarah, anything that was here, I was willing to accept and embrace. Doesn't mean I'll incorporate it and make it a part of my life. But as you say, every day was brand new and a painting picture for me. You know, every day felt like a Saturday. I mean, it's what are you
Yeah.
going to do? You're on your tippy toes and you're really enjoying your life, and you start living again. And
Yeah.
you're doing this as an adult, not as a child with restrictions. So you have the opportunity to either get in trouble, which is the easy way, or the tough way is to really immerse yourself and see
Yeah.
if you could really do it the right way. This one last shot, one last time.
Hmm.
I tell you what, I was not going to let it go to waste. And so I was just exceptionally open minded. And my Spanish at that time, okay, we're talking about 27, so it was advanced intermediate and almost basic, proficient.
Yeah.
And,
How
it
was
takes time. Yes.
yeah. How was the place where you were at as far as Spanish proficiency? How did that play a role within your job of teaching people in telemarketing? Because if you were already at that country and they didn't speak English, I'm assuming that was the case. Was it easy to communicate and teach what you had to teach them? Did you have this sort of system set so that it was easier because of the basic language barrier?
That's a brilliant question. It depends. Now, most, if not all, of the agents at the call centers here are bilingual. But you might have back office non-voice support that's Spanish speaking fine. But most of them tend to clients in the United States, Canada, and Europe. But when I do the Spanish, it's to assist in onboarding or making another point, which you can, which is beautiful. You're getting it on both sides, like two fronts. When we're doing side by sides and shadowing, it's home court advantage. It'd be great to have one person speaking the native tongue to the other to teach it to them. So it saves a lot of training time. Naturally, they need to learn how to do it in English. But I tell you what, let's say we are making our calls in English and we get a Latino client and they have the permission to speak in Spanish or they want to. It's almost like a power up. Like, for an example, they'll start calling someone Don Fernando. We don't do that in the United States. That's not an Anglo-Saxon thing. They'll just call him, Fernando. But you hear the Don Fernando or the Mucho Gusto, and it's beautiful. I mean, it really goes from t-shirt to suit. And
Yeah.
their conversion ratios, their talk times, their satisfaction, their morale, as I say before, it's a power boost. And so I love seeing that sort of interaction. But
Yeah.
it's never really been held back. The only thing that affected me are certain expressions or jokes in Spanish, which I just don't get. I'm halfway translating and they've already on to their fourth joke. And so I need to slow
Yeah.
down and ask for clarification from time to time. But that's the cute part of life because it's very colorful. The jokes are great if they're not vulgar and if
Yeah.
they can tell you why it's a joke and the vocabulary used. It's wonderful. Like, el que madruga come pechuga. I mean, certain expressions that you can use. And it's just, it's very nice when people are willing to share these things.
Yeah. And how do we go from everything that you've told us to this new adventure, which is Pimble, right?
Yeah.
And your Rocola jukeboxes. How did that happen? Is this something that you were liking before, or did this start there?
Well, I have a question for you real quick. When you were in
Yeah.
school, wasn't your favorite class recess so you could play?
Yeah.
When you make your best friends? I realize that even though we're growing up, it doesn't mean to be too serious. I've always loved these machines. I was born in 1972. So arcades were huge in the 70s and 80s. And when I started building the business, I had the room for it. And it's treasure hunting in Costa Rica. I'm willing to drive 4 or 5 hours to a bodega in the mountains and
Wow.
save a machine. And the agents love it. It's a happy medium. It gives them a chance to relax a little bit and to meet other people and to play games that they've never tried before, especially real American pinball. But
How
to answer
how
your
many
question,
do
it's
you
my greatest.
have?
I got 6 jukeboxes, 15 pinball machines, an assortment of fighting machines and air hockey tables. But my oldest pinball is a 1970 Bally's Camelot. And my newest one is a 1994 Data East Last Action Hero with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I like the machines, especially from the 70s and the 80s and a little bit of the 90s, but they're so much fun. I can't tell you enough how much it's my pure passion.
Yeah. Is there a what's the price range for these machines? Depending on the like, what would be the price range for the oldest one you have and the newest one you have?
It's very interesting because my Camelot's worth maybe in mint condition about $1,400, while the Last Action Hero can go as high as maybe $7,000 depending. And then you have games today that could be 20,000 if it's specific for a movie or a rock band. But I tell you what, if you really wanted to buy a beautiful machine, there are some out there from the 70s and 80s that you can pick up for under $1,000. Just make sure the play field's nice and the marquee and the outside's okay, because there are certain parts you can order. That's
Yeah.
a couple dollars just to put in and fix. And but yeah, for let's say $1,000, you have a gorgeous machine from the mid 70s and early 80s that would just light up a living room and everyone can hang around. And they're quite affordable, but they're high maintenance. They're very delicate. And so, really, the issue is if people try to tilt them, but some of the cables last as long as you just give certain general maintenance on them, or you watch an electrician that shows you what to do to connect things or to change a light bulb. You can pretty much, handle them most of the time. But oh, the play fields are gorgeous. They used to paint the wood, Sarah, before putting on laminates or calcomanías or stickers. And so
Yeah.
you can see certain cracks in some of the machines in the old marquee art from the 60s and 70s. And this one here, she's a 1961 Ricola Regis. I'm in
Mm.
love with them. I mean, what am I supposed
Wow.
to do?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. It's you gotta have the love for them, The way you look at them, I'm pretty sure there are other collectors and I'm pretty sure there are other people that are very interested in them, but definitely they give a nice touch anywhere, you see them.
Keeps me
So
young, you know?
good,
It keeps me
good,
young.
good, good. Richard, what would you say are the most important things for telemarketers to know? What would you say is the basic
It's a wonderful
strategy?
question. Oh, so much. I believe in the thesaurus that you should always be looking into strategic and diplomatic vocabulary. So don't use words like help, reverse it and put in guide, assist, or lend a hand. Never say excuse me. It's for my clarification. Sarah, there's certain swords we can fall upon to keep the tone positive. Positive escalations is when you compliment somebody verbally or in writing to a superior or a coworker. It's just like calling a manager over and letting you know how awesome the waitress was. And next thing you know, you're getting, an extra scoop of ice cream or something. Or even not. You might just want to just pay it forward with just a compliment. I think romantic deaths are fine. The first 30 seconds of a call, even regardless of the outcome and you get hung up upon, you should do a company name spike. You should introduce yourself in a certain way where you are clear in answering their questions so they don't have to repeat. Transitional sentences are very interesting. You can say that makes sense, right? Sounds good, right? Well, let's go on to the next point. These are certain checkpoints so you don't leave doors open. Military alphabet is essential in case you need to spell somebody's exotic name so emails don't bounce back. Do some due diligence prior to a phone call so you can anchor with a company or a person like you and I did prior to our calls. And you can also leave custom-made voicemails, write custom-made emails. And are these guarantees? No, but these are the sort of things that will move you closer and give you better percentages when you're shooting at the net, because these are common courtesies. These are soft skills and
Yeah.
old school ways to stay focused and pay attention to what you're trying to do in building these relationships. And also, you should never compromise your ethics, values, and morals. Don't let Hollywood's Wolf of Wall Street and Boiler Room give you a bad impression of individuals that earn a living making and receiving phone calls. We're very selective of the campaigns that come in. And the agents here have the leverage. They don't have to choose to work for something that they wouldn't be proud of.
Yeah.
And so it's very important for me to offer them something that's stable, that's ethical, pays well, makes them feel good about themselves. And if your audience, more telemarketers, if they're as good as they think they are, they have the leverage. They can choose. They have options. They don't have to support a place that does bad things. And so for me, I like to take it at certain levels. I like individuals to listen to their own calls because we do QA. And from there, my friend, with self-analysis, they're able to make self-improvements. And you can
What do you,
see that sort of progression. And finally, extending empathy, because it's not for the faint of heart. Making telephone calls, it's not easy. But if you do not put yourself in a certain box where you're a print and carpet bombing all day, every call should be like a painting. You should be very unique. There should be at least a 10% in that call, a zig and a zag that you catch on to, that you can connect with. And if you're in the now and you're paying attention, you should enjoy this art of speech, the beautiful dance of language. And if you do that, you won't hate the job like a lot of people do, or they burn out. If you separate that and look at the pure side of it, as we discussed earlier, the beauty of languages and expression, then by all means, you should be exceptionally successful on the phone and set the fine example for those that are around you. And that's kind of my advice, my friend, because a lot of people give it a bad rap. But if
yeah.
people go into it in a certain mindset and do the right things, it's a very, very rewarding career.
What do you say to people that usually you guys are training and they're starting and they get discouraged? They take it. Is there a way to, outside of everything you said, or a technique that you guys have had to not take these rejections personal?
If they are prepared for it, then I will take that rejection. I mean, from an educated point of view, the client makes a decision. If people, if they're hard on themselves, they have bad habits. They're coming from a center that had different metrics or different ways to motivate. In fact, I'd prefer to have somebody that's never worked at a call center before so they could be molded. Squire to a night. And listen, Sarah, if you're willing to make telemarketing calls, you're going to take one in a chin. Part of the game is getting hung up on. We get hung up on for a living. The question is, how many arrows can you get through? How many times can you really do a perfect shot each time? Just play your percentages. No one bats 1,000. So I was mentioning earlier, romantic death. Well, kind of, looking at me funny a little bit, but yeah, that's the rejection, kiddo. I want to be a successful quitter hung up on, after I said, hey, Sarah, Richard Blank, Costa Rica's Galton, how successful quitters doing today? And so that's okay because I jump clouds. You bring our nubes. You keep it pure. If it's a 10-minute call, that's a grind and twisting a knife, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not fun to get that sort of rejection at the end of the call unless you go the distance, and by default, it's not a converted call. But if you got these people that are black and blue and you're just making those calls like a real estate agent, insurance agent, prospecting, I believe that you could have a wonderful 30 seconds 100 times a day. And then you never know where that goes if you just say a name of a company better than the person who answers the phone and compliment the individual before transferring me to Sarah. And then when I
Yeah.
speak to you, I'm going to let you know your assistant was completely fantastic. And when I
So
call your company back, they'll thank me for that.
absolutely. I do real estate myself, and
Aha.
I do cold calls. And
Ooh.
what I have figured out is that, and what helps me tremendously, because people are extremely nice to me, so I don't really have a hard time making these cold calls. But what
Right.
I've realized early on was that you have to have some sort of compassion for the person that is answering the phone without expecting a phone call. Because
Hmm.
me, myself, whenever I get a phone call out of nowhere, maybe I'm in the middle of work, breakfast, the gym, or many other things, or just thinking about something important, and all of a sudden I get this call from a person trying to sell me something. So how would I react? No, and I don't think everyone is at that place of willing to buy, but also willing to be on the phone for a few
Yeah.
seconds or minutes while this person is trying to give you value or sell, right?
A 10-minute phone call to me doesn't exist. It's 20, 30-second phone calls that I combine together. You brought up a good point. You got to buy time. I see it
Yeah.
as 30-second clips. And what I used to do when I used to make phone calls for the MLS and cancels and expireds was I would look at their home and I would compliment the curb appeal or the sport court or the kitchen. And I'd let them know how beautiful their home is. And then I would do a self wrap. I go, listen, Sarah, it's Sunday at 3 p.m. and I'm making this phone call. Most people are watching the Eagles play football and I'm making these calls. Isn't that the sort of individual that you would like representing your home? I like just sending you an email. I'm touching base with you. I like just leaving a message. And so these were the little first downs that I would get. These were the things to at least have them drop that defensive barrier, because real estate, they're getting 50 calls a day. But how does how do we separate ourselves? By showing sincere interest, by doing some due diligence, and letting them know, as you say, that you and I are nice people, and to
Yeah.
at least just give us 30 seconds to a minute to introduce ourselves and see if we can do something. And yeah, just like yourself, people were very nice to me. I got a lot of people that say thank you, but no thank you. Someone's an agent, or
Yeah.
I have a family member that does it, or we're not looking to sell. But you just jumped another cloud. They didn't say we're good, thanks. They remembered your name. They thanked you for your
Yes.
time. They thought you were charming. And those are the sort of little sips of water in the oasis of the calling desert that we have to go through, that
Yeah.
keeps us going. But you didn't get the
Absolutely.
appointment. No, no. But Sarah said the name of the family perfectly and the name of the street, which was kind of complicated, but you still got it. And the son answered the phone, and you were nice enough to mention to the owner how polite the child was. You were smart like that. And they asked you to call back in 4 weeks. You did it to the day and to the hour and to the minute they asked. And maybe by default, you're the last one standing because everybody
Right.
else was too pushy or didn't call back or was mean to the kid and didn't look at the house prior. And, I sometimes would look left and right. I was the only one. And so maybe it's
Yeah.
because I knew my manners and I
I
knew
think
the
that's a good point.
parameters.
That's a good
There's
point.
parameters and
Manners,
barriers. Mhm.
yeah, and energy, right? Energy, matching whatever energy, or if the energy is very low, what I try to do is bring it a little bit higher, but not really pushing it to where we're off, but kind of feeling where they could be at that point.
I give them reassurance. I let them know that they ask an excellent question like a teacher in class. They encourage participation, maybe giving them the option. And if they don't know, go, come on, Sarah, I know you like at least one. I didn't say you like all seven things I mentioned. And so you can almost deduct and reduce and make it easy for them and give them just an A B answer. And, they feel like they're participating or they're in control. And someone has to lead the dance. It's
Yeah.
you, but allow them to choose the music, right? And
Yeah.
and that's okay. And as I say
I love that.
before, it doesn't have to go straight into business. Listen, you're lucky. You're real estate calling. So there's a very good chance you're going to hear a dog in the background, a child in the background, kitchen noises, music, TV, chatter. And what I do is when I hear a dog, that's an immediate goal for me. I stop and I say, Sarah, I love dogs. What's the name of your puppy? How old is it? What breed is your puppy?
Yeah.
Puppy, it's 12 years old, but it's still a puppy, and you connect like that. And you wonder why. She goes, I get all these phone calls, but you're the first one to ask about my dog.
Yeah.
Listen, you can do your real estate all day long, but I still need a cherry on top. Every call's the riddle. It's the rompecabezas. What are you going to find on that call by really listening and paying attention that will separate you from somebody else prior to any contracts? Really showing that interest. I've been able to clip it. I've been able to do that through looking at websites and LinkedIn profiles.
Mm.
And as I mentioned before, it's not like I'm prying, but I'm listening to your home with a dog barking in the background. What do you want me to do? And
Yeah.
so I've realized by taking certain chances like that, or calculated chances, obviously, if you own a dog or you have a child, you love them. So why don't we take a second and use a Me Too technique? You talked about mirror imaging earlier. You can do
Yeah.
that in regards to tone and rate and pitch, but also in interests. You're allowed to have Me Too. I love dogs too. I like people
Yeah.
that are successful quitters. I'd love to go visit your native country one day and see the Incas and see what's going on down there. It's a beautiful place with a wonderful culture and very proud. And so, um, yes,
Makes
that's the
makes
now. That's the secret sauce that we try to do.
makes so much sense, and I think this is gonna be helpful for all the salespeople that are gonna be watching this. And the other thing I wanted to know was a little bit about the scholarship. The scholarship help you help with the scholarship um, to high school, right?
That's correct. My proud alma mater in Northeast Philadelphia, Abington High School. Once again, they got me into college. And so I do a second language scholarship every year for a graduating senior. And you know perfectly well who really does speak a second language. And
Yeah,
if they're not born into it, right? But if it's a completely different language than the way you were raised, that is real cognitive skills, dedication, and commitment. And so I see myself in them, and it's not an athletic or music or scholastic scholarship. I made it very specific, and anybody can win it. Anybody can win it. And if they can get to that level, I have to pay it forward.
yeah.
First, I can. And second, I want to. It's a great thing to do for somebody.
It is
And,
amazing, especially at that age, because that's when they're deciding what they're gonna do. And not everybody has the possibilities to.
but they have a special sauce, even if they're forced into doing something that they do. By having that second language, as I say, it just opens so many doors and makes so many friends. Oh, I was doing some thinking as well. One last point in regards to your telemarketers. I think you'll love this the most. Do you know in any sort of composition you have your introduction, body, and conclusion? It's like that in any story, in any sort of incident. I believe that in the beginning of a call, you do exchange information. It's an introduction. In the conclusion, you're confirming it. And you might say the name at the end, which is a waste. You should have said it the whole call. But if the client says your name in the body of the call, not intro or conclusion, I give my agents the most points.
Mm.
I do, because that's when you've 100% anchored. It usually happens when you talk about a dog or a child or something cool on their website, or as you say, pinball and stuff. Besides the, courteous introduction and the gracious goodbye, I want to know in the meat and the potatoes of this call, does Sarah actually say the name Richard? And if they do, you get so many
Yeah,
points with me. That's the zen. That's the balance. That's the focus. That's the breathing. That's
that's where you
it.
know you got them, huh? You got
And
their attention. Would that be a confirmation that you got their attention somewhat, or
more
did
than
they?
that, my friend, it's a 360. That ball can be hit any way. I don't know where you're going to connect with this individual. Usually for me, it's the dog, or I get excited over their business or where they're from or where they live. I always try to find something to show really, really, really sincere, not just interest. Me interested and ask you a question. When someone raises a voice, leans forward, asks like 5 quick questions in a row about like scoops of ice cream and toppings, it's wickedly cool. And then go, wait a second, this person really is interested. So they look at it differently.
Yeah.
And I needed to do that on every call, because if I didn't, then as you say, it wasn't as authentic as it could be. They wouldn't remember me. I wouldn't get that sort of consideration. I needed to use those soft skills and courtesy and escalation and meeting minutes and writing it so they'd remember me and they'd see
Yeah.
I made the efforts and that I'm organized and I like details and I like levels, and maybe they might see themselves in me. And it's just, how do you make a connection in 4 minutes?
Yeah.
When half the time you're pausing or letting them speak, you only have so much to talk about. And so I think
Absolutely.
you should have a same message, but a different type of delivery. You should always trigger and spike a name. Like I've been doing this thing when I say Sarah, I get all excited. It gets a little bit more, it gets the fuego artificial, it gets the firecracker, it gets the
Yeah.
chispa, it gets your spark. Don't do
Yeah.
it the
No,
whole
definitely.
call, but these are ways, if you're doing phone calls, you can bring them back and get their attention again, because
Yeah.
their attention spans are about 30 seconds. They're going to lose you. So
Yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
confirmation questions. Things make sense. Sounds good, right? Options you like. Pause before names and numbers. But as I say before, the golden bell there is when they say your name, and that's when you know you're a pure artist of speech. Everything else is irrelevant, my friend, because you'll get the sale. Duh.
Yeah.
But if they really, really like you, like your best friend, they're willing to let you spill paint in the house and they'll still sign the contract. And so with people on the phone, don't push, don't force a hand. Try to
Yeah.
find that way to let them know that this is different from all the other flowers that are out there. This is a true bloomer. This is a true
Yeah.
romantic and passionate person. Wickedly
I like that.
cool.
I like
Mm-hmm.
that. With that being said,
Yeah.
Richard, what is coming for you next? What are we to expect from you within the next couple of years? What's the goal for the next couple of years?
By the way, I love when you say my name. It's very exciting. It's a good
Good.
hook. You got me excited. What's going on in the next couple of years? Yeah, Richard, what are you doing? Um, I think I'm going to start writing some children's books, Sarah.
Very
Yeah,
nice. I like
it's going to
that.
revolve around mini golf and Rube Goldberg experiments, which were those non-electrical machines. Because I always want people to play with things that are not electrical, or that if you lose a part, you can't use it anymore. I want people to be creative, like when we used to build forts with pillows or Legos and these amazing, creations. And so it's very fun to build a sandcastle and to use your mind.
Yeah.
And I like mini golf because I think it's fun. And I always
So
think
fun.
kids can be creative.
Good, good. When are you, have you already started putting that together, or are you about to?
I have so many ideas on that. But yes,
Mm.
the book hasn't been finished yet, but I've probably got about a dozen ideas that are on the side that once I do have the full time to commit to this. And also, you do know what I love? I love stop motion animation. It's like,
Mm.
taking that one photograph a little bit at a time. And so I
Yes.
always found those sort of movies cool, like Sinbad, or, when they had, what was it, Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer? That was stop motion animation. And so, um, why do I like that classic stuff? I don't know. I just think if it's something that I can afford, it can be controlled, and I can take my time, like those people that paint those models or put those ships in bottles. I'm more than
Yeah.
willing to put in a week's worth to get 20 seconds worth of time in a movie and just see what
Yeah.
happens. And why? Because I always thought it was one of the coolest things ever. And I
Yeah.
think now's the time that I want to invest in the things that make me happy.
Good, good. Please keep me posted. I definitely would love to continue sharing all your endeavors. And I love that you want to continue giving back, paying it forward, not only with the scholarship, but also creating things that children can actually play with and learn from. That's amazing,
Yeah.
especially in these times when technology is such a such a thing, you know?
Hmm.
So I love it. And I think not only myself, but everyone that watches this will have learned a lot, not only from your background, but also those amazing golden nuggets that you gave us on sales, telemarketing. That's something I'm very grateful for.
You're so
So,
kind.
absolutely. I thank you so much for being part of this episode. I look forward to speaking with you about everything that you mentioned now and that you're so successful at it. And how can they find you online?
They can go to my Facebook fan page, Costa Rica's Call Center. We have 127,000 local Costa Rican ticos. Now, real quick for your audience, I'm north of Panama, south of Nicaragua. Costa Rica is the only democratic society in Central America. There's no standing army, so there's a 95% literacy rate. Put their money back into education. We have a very good infrastructure, and we're known for ecotourism and medical tourism. And companies such as Amazon, HP, Intel, and Oracle are here. And I compete against them to get my agents. But guess what? As cool as Jeff Bezos is, I don't think he's ever played pinball with all of his agents. So I got him on that.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you've had a great impact in their lives because I believe that the profession of sales is the greatest thing you could ever do because you are an artist, really. You have to. There are so many tips and tricks that you can put into your speech in order to change people's lives in a positive way, and that's amazing. So
It's
thank you so
100%
much
correct.
again. And we'll be putting all of your information on YouTube as well so that we have the links to your Facebook. And this is the end of episode number 3. Thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.